All right, everyone stare with me. We're doing this. All right, Polly.
It's not clickbait, I promise, but this is some really interesting Yu-Gi-Oh news
I
that
promise
is a
it's
little bit
not
concerning,
clickbait.
but also a little bit exciting. And so I wanted to talk about it with you guys and get your opinions on it. Okay, so the news comes to us from Konami's 51st annual shareholder meeting in Japan.
Careful
Yu-Gi-Oh
playing.
actually came up as one of the concerns that the shareholders had. And so Konami's president actually had to respond as well. I've got the translation
Wait,
of the
Konami's president
question that was
responded?
asked and also his response to it. This was just with Google Translate, so it might be a little bit shaky, and I'll of course try to provide a little bit of extra context where I can. So
There's no way you Google translated this.
shareholder statement says, regarding Yu-Gi-Oh content, I am concerned that two things may have a negative impact on growth. The first is that we have not been able to successfully acquire new users. New users who started with Yu-Gi-Oh Master Duel sometimes give up when trying to start playing Yu-Gi-Oh in real life.
Whoa, he's like skipped some stuff here. I don't see that word.
This was the case with a player I actually met at a Yu-Gi-Oh OCG Duel Monsters, that's what it's fully called in Japan, tournament. Isn't it necessary to consider how to eliminate such cases?
Okay, he skipped like a
Judging
sentence
from the
there.
opinions of players and online players, official Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments are often distributed as...
So remember that this is like the context is exclusively Japanese here, right? So it's important to understand that this is at least from the OCG perspective. So I don't know how, like, if this is like just a personal representation of this stockholder's actual IRL playthrough or experience with John Konami's Yu-Gi-Oh over in the OCG, but it is like important to understand that this is the OCG portion.
One-sided matches, leading to a decline in player motivation and a lack of new users entering Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG Duel Monsters. I think it's related to the difficulty. If surrendering, which is currently not allowed by the official rules, was allowed, it will give a rise to a strategy of restarting from the next game, and I think that the appeal of the video will increase, so please consider it. Alright, let's break a couple of things down.
Imagine a stockholder just saying something like, please consider it, to like the president of John Konami. Anyway, major point here is that Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't seem to be translating to paper from Macedo. So getting people to play OCG from Macedo doesn't seem to be like happening quite consistently. And live streams apparently are kind of difficult to watch. And I don't know if this is like just a personal opinion thing here, or if this is actually backed up with stats or something that he's mentioning. But apparently the live streams, at least for OCG, remember this is OCG exclusively, aren't doing so well because apparently people don't get to scoop, so you have to just sit and wait and watch someone play through a full combo. And as I've identified here, the most major, important, relevant reasons why Yu-Gi-Oh does not grow or Yu-Gi-Oh might stagnate and has a poor player poor new player experience can be sometimes, I think, related to these 3 points here, which is the time taken per turn, time taken to actually read the cards, because, you know, actually getting the words into your head, processing, and then understanding what the practical application of all that combo is. And there's no guidance as well for, like, how do I get good cards? What deck should I build? What's a budget version? What's a non-budget version? Blah, 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 blah. So these are, like, the 3 main points that I identified from the last discussion we had. So let's see what Paul's take is on it.
The next game, and I think that the appeal of the video will increase, so please consider it. All right, let's break a couple of things down here really quickly. So basically what they're talking about is that Yu-Gi-Oh is having a tough time retaining new people, and so they feel that might, you know, limit its growth potential. I know that Yu-Gi-Oh is very popular in Japan, and I think that what they're saying here is that people start playing Yu-Gi-Oh oftentimes through Master Duel, but when they start playing the physical game, they still find themselves very overwhelmed or very confused. They also refer to how Yu-Gi-Oh is distributed, and I think here they're talking about videos and live streams being very one-sided and not exciting to watch. In the OCG, players are not...
I don't know how it is. I've never watched like a Magic stream or anything, but I don't know how easy it is to follow those things. I know Hearthstone is very easy to follow. Sometimes, occasionally, I'll check out the Grandmasters or whatever they're called, and they're very good because you have Twitch extensions that let you hover over the card and read them and stuff like that, which is really cool. You get like full like player cam of like the player's perspective, the opponent's perspective, but obviously that's digital, which is very different. So I'm hoping that maybe, you know, something like that can be injected into Master Duel at least. That could be very cool. But in terms of like actually as a new player following a game, it's not like an FPS where you can look at the screen and be like, oh, someone just got shot in the head and they died. That's probably good, right? For the team in a video game, for points, not as a general concept. Anyway.
Allowed to scoop or, you know, concede during games. If your opponent has a huge long 10-minute combo and all the gas is possible in their hand and you have no hand traps to stop it whatsoever, you still have to sit and wait through all of it.
I mean, look at this, right? Imagine you're like a new player, like checking this out, and you're watching this stream, and like, I mean, look, this is just a full live twin sprite combo, and Raymond here apparently is just sitting with 5 cards there, just stare. So how do you like translate this into new player friendliness from a live stream? You just can't really, right?
And you have no hand traps to stop it whatsoever. You still have to sit and wait through all of it. It's kind of considered a respect thing. I think it's a sort of a cultural difference. Obviously, in the TCG, if that happens, we can just scoop and go to the next game, but they can't. And this person is saying that that can kind of create some very unpleasant viewing experiences for people who know that the game is one-sided and has kind of already been, determined, but they still have to just sit there and kind of be miserable as their opponent just combos off. So to summarize, they want Yu-Gi-Oh to be
Very bizarre thing that you just can't scoop in OCG. I don't know how relevant this is to the actual like player retention of the game. I don't know how many people who are new players even tune in to like Japanese Yu-Gi-Oh streams and stuff like that. But the coverage for Japanese Yu-Gi-Oh, I don't know where it is. Like I've never really tuned in or heard of it. I know they streamed Nationals like the other week or something, and it was like 9 a.m. So I didn't really bother watching it because I wasn't streaming that day. But they do stream, but I don't know how consistent it is and how often and what the general player perception is over there,
more accessible and also more watchable. So next is what Konami's president responded. This is Hideki Hayakawa. Thank you for your valuable opinion. It is a great pity that the Yu-Gi-Oh card game did not
Bro, that is literally John Konami himself. Holy. That is literally Mr. Konami himself.
last long after it was launched. I think what he means here is that it's a shame that players were onboarded but did not stay long, like they didn't play for a very long time. The Yu-Gi-Oh card game has been undergoing revisions to the regulations and changes to the rules over time. We have received the opinion that we may not be able to successfully attract new users, but we take it seriously and would like to continue considering different tournament rules so that more customers can enjoy the game. Going forward, we will continue to focus on what kind of playing environment will allow as many customers as possible to enjoy the game for a long time. Also, with regards to the poor appearance of tournament video distribution,
I think it's like really weird to hear like the word customer being used and like user instead of like player. It's just very odd, isn't it? I guess that's technically what we are, aren't we?
We want people to enjoy playing Yu-Gi-Oh, of course, but we want them to see it and say it's fun to watch. This has been a very important issue for the past several years. I think it's a valuable opinion. I also think that it is extremely reasonable. So I would like to take the opinions I received back to the company. So a lot to unpack here. I think a less charitable interpretation of what he said here is, we hear you, we'll think about it, I'll get back to you on that. But I think that he's being genuine here, and I think that Konami is well
noted.
Aware of these concerns. So clearly Konami knows that Yu-Gi-Oh's got a bit of an accessibility problem and a bit of a watchability problem, and they are, trying to take steps to fix it. Now, like I said, a lot of this applies more so to Japan, but I think a lot of the changes that Konami might make could trickle over to TCG territories. All right, so let's move the conversation over to the TCG. Yu-Gi-Oh has been in this really big resurgence lately. YCS events and the World Championship qualifiers have been getting really high attendance, so you can definitely tell that competitive Yu-Gi-Oh is on the rise. There's a lot of interest, and players are definitely going out, playing, and enjoying it. We also have a lot of other really cool things going on, like the 25th anniversary that's been happening, like the new quarter century secret rares, or them re-releasing the Legend of Blue Eyes and Spell Roller packs, Hypeland and other brands making different shirts and accessories, skateboards and stuff. I've seen all kinds of things. But you can't deny that Yu-Gi-Oh still has that sort of stigma for being a really difficult game to just play. And it sort of depends on who.
It's so annoying sometimes, but this is like the average thing you get when like new players or like old boomers have like takes on Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Like literally Yu-Gi-Oh too fast. Like this one right here. Oh my god, look.
That it is set everything on fire!
What is a simple thing, such as summoning, goes from this to this shit right here?
I am not done yet! Let me introduce you to Link Summon! Here's how it works. First,
So this is the average play like interpretation of Yu-Gi-Oh, right? 2.4 million views. Like this is what people think Yu-Gi-Oh is. And it's one of the major issues, admittedly. Like, yes, it's obviously very extremely blown out of proportion. The cards they use is like 2 scales and like 4 vanillas, and it ends up in like a 5-card crazy combo that like isn't physically possible. But anyway, the point is, it's like, yes, it's hyperbolic and it's probably exaggerated to a massive extent, but the point there still kind of stands. It's like Yu-Gi-Oh does take like 10 minutes sometimes to just watch your opponent do like a basic like cash tira combo, right? Like, or sprite like for hire combo, you know what I mean? And how do you translate that away for the new player experience to actually have a chance and do something against those kind of decks, right? That's like the major problem that Yu-Gi-Oh needs to solve, and we haven't really found a solution.
Who you ask, right? I'm going to try not to go full Yugi boomer here, but we all have seen the, person who tries to get into the game and they just find themselves really overwhelmed. Yu-Gi-Oh's got this rep for being hard to learn, hard to play, and I think that not all of it is entirely fair. So I feel that Yu-Gi-Oh's rules are surprisingly easy to pick up and figure out. In fact, they've made some really big strides towards making Yu-Gi-Oh even more easy to understand.
I don't know if I agree with that. I don't think Yu-Gi-Oh's like rules are actually that easy compared to other cards. In terms of other card games, I think Yu-Gi-Oh's the hardest to learn in the rules and stuff like that. The absolute very basic, like if you only play with like vanilla monsters, like Yu-Gi-Oh's very easy. Normal summon, special summon, battle phase, attack, end phase, life point damage, attack, set a card, flip a card. But then you start, really delving into like the game itself, and you have to explain things like the difference between activation, the difference between an effect being negated and an activation being negated, and then the battle step and the damage step, and then the damage calculation, the end step, maintenance costs, conditions, triggers, ignitions. I don't know, dude. I really don't think Yu-Gi-Oh is that simple. All of those things I just mentioned individually are kind of simple, but when you compound them all together in the space of like a new player experience of sitting down for an afternoon to learn how to play Yu-Gi-Oh, it's way too much information. It's too overwhelming.
If you play Master Duel, you'll pretty much learn exactly how effect activations and chain resolutions and all of that stuff works. And problem-solving card text that they implemented like 10 years ago now has done a really great job, I think, in just improving the readability of cards. Even if card text is still really long and the text is really small, at least, that's something. If you're watching this video, you know how chains work, you know what's going on, you've kept up with all the different summoning mechanics, so none of it really surprises you. But you can see how it would just be a little bit overwhelming for somebody to experience in real time. Sure, a tutorial booklet might say, okay, synchro summoning is easy. Tuner, non-tuner, add up levels, make synchro. Against a modern deck, they're going to be doing 2 or 3 synchro summons, 2 or 3 link summons, 2 or 3
Farfa be like,
and lots of different combos from the grave and the hand and the banish zone all within one turn. And that, I think, is where stuff can get a little bit much. So I do think Konami's been doing a few nice things to help with the issue. First and foremost, alternative formats. This is something they've actually been embracing, and a lot of people have been asking for it for a really long time. There is, of course, the speed duel format. It's not super popular, but I am a big fan of it. Some less charitable folk might call it the Yu-Gi-Oh! And training wheels, but I do think speed duels bring a lot to the table for newbies. It's a really accessible way to play. You only have 3 monster card zones, 3 spell trap card zones, and the skill cards kind of add a bit of a fun anime element to it as well. And if you're not into that, then there's also the Time Wizard format, supporting things like Edison format and Goat format. And this has been really
The thing as well with speed duels is, I don't know how it is in other games, but other games that are like designed for you to draft and designed for you to like pick up and play immediately. Things like Magic Commander, I think you can do that, or like just drafting in Magic or something like that. Like Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't really have that. And I think the closest thing to that is really Speed Duel, but it's not really something you can just go week in and week out and buy. Because that product, I don't think, is supposed to be designed for something that you just pull and buy every single week. That's not really a thing. We do have drafting in Yu-Gi-Oh. No, you do not. Yu-Gi-Oh has no drafting. Yu-Gi-Oh hasn't drafted in like 10 years. Nope, that's not a thing.
Popping off.
Which I think would be really good for the game is if it had drafting with very simple cards.
They had an entire Edison dedicated event, and people love this stuff. That said, though, I do have some suggestions that I think Konami could implement. First of all, I really like this new 2-player starter deck product that they've recently announced. It's supposed to be this thing that actually contains 2 decks and is meant to teach people how to play with a fully scripted...
We still don't have the details of what's in here, right? Other than like literally like a couple of these cards on the box, right?
Duel. I think this is genius. It's something that, Yu-Gi-Oh hasn't really had before. We haven't even had starter decks for like years now, but I think finally having one that is meant to teach, more modern mechanics, which seems like what they're doing here. They're trying to teach you synchro summoning and Z summoning. I always feel like starter decks sort of misrepresent Yu-Gi-Oh! Like they'll be like, here, normal summon this vanilla monster and end your turn, but then when you go to a tournament, it's like 50 summons in a turn and a bunch of different chains and effect resolving. So my hope for this is that it kind of is a better representation of what you'll actually get when you go to your card shop and play Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm not entirely sure how the product is going to work or exactly how much it's going to cost, but I think that this is a really great resource for new people.
If you don't know how the new player, 2-player structure deck thing works, by the way, you basically have like a tutorial in it. Like you physically like take out like some cards, and then it tells you like what to activate and stuff like that. Apparently, it's like you play through like a scripted duel. That's a different approach. That's pretty unique. We've never had something like that before. I don't know if that's how I would do it, but I guess maybe it could help a decent amount. Maybe. It is literally solo mode IRL, by the way.
Definitely more of that. I do think Konami needs to have a rulings resource. This is something that I've said for years now. The judge program that Konami has is great. Judges do a good job. I don't mean to undermine their efforts, but I do think that it's hard to actually just understand Yu-Gi-Oh! And sometimes you have questions about card interactions and rulings, and so it would be really good if there was sort of an online resource that you could go to where you can just, find precedents on rulings that have been set. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has this weird thing where, like, Konami doesn't really like to own rulings. It's just
I don't know how relevant this is. Like, this is more of like a top-end competitive player thing, but the average, like, new player casual doesn't really need, like, a ruling repository, right? Like, I don't think that's relevant, right? Like, a new player needs to, like, wants to understand, like, oh, can I activate this card in response to this? Like, it's, like, very basic rulings, like an RC0 judge at locals could explain, right? That's, like, the kind of thing that a Yu-Gi-Oh player, that a new player at Yu-Gi-Oh would be able to, would need to be able to ask, which... Locals have that, right? Generally, good locals have, like, judges dedicated for tournaments and stuff like that you can ask. But obviously, that's, like, a good thing anyway. Like, that is obviously something we should have in general. Because right now, the only way to really get like high-end rulings like that is to go to like the OCG database and then try and draw a parallel.
Just whatever the judge said at a
And
given
even
event.
then,
So
sometimes
it'd
it
be
is
really
just
great
like
if you
based
could
on
use
the
maybe your
event-to-event
smartphone, make an
basis
app like
of
Yu-Gi-Oh!
what the
Neuron,
head judge
perhaps,
says.
and look up the card that's giving you trouble. Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikia actually has had this for years, and even though those are unofficial rulings, a lot of players still use them. I think it's crazy that players have to go to Facebook groups or obscure Discord servers or something to just ask for information about this. That's something that I feel Konami should really be providing. I also think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Needs to do more at the local level.
Like, think of it this way, right? If you are at a point where you need to ask for like a ruling in terms of like card interactions and like PSET and stuff, like you're already at the point where you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! At a decent level. Maybe not decent level, but like at a level that is like competent enough to like not just be like set a vanilla and pass, right? Because if that's the kind of gameplay you're doing, like you're not really at a level where you even need to know like rulings per se. So that's like a stage after the new player experience, in my opinion.
Level to really draw players in and kind of retain them. So something that I saw at my local card shop is that the Pokemon TCG scene has this board. I have no clue what it's called, but there's this board and everybody's names go on it. And you get sort of accomplishments or achievements like in a video game for doing basic and sort of advanced things, like entering a tournament or conducting a trade or bringing a friend to locals for the first time. I think that this would translate super well to Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe you can
Is that a pyramid scheme?
get a little bit granular and have it about building different decks or conducting different summoning types. Sure, there are some logistics that you'd have to work out, but I think that this could be great for just getting people involved in the game and kind of keeping them entertained and encouraging socialization and teaching. I know that Yu-Gi-Oh! Used to have these Yu-Gi-Oh! Day events. I think they still have them. I'm not entirely sure how they
Wow.
work. I
Thank
know
you,
it was
Fuster.
supposed to sort of be a thing where, like judges or local sort of card shop employees could teach people how to play. My locals have not had them in ages, or at least when they do, that's not exactly how they work.
One of my locals has a
Plan a
weekly
tournament for
Teach
the
Yu-Gi-Oh!
Day
Players
madness at the end of
event,
it.
by the way.
So that's something that Konami would have to work with card shops a little bit more on. They have a small bit of it. Like I know that they have the Trials of the Pharaoh events. I think that that's something that they do with speed duels, but I haven't really seen that at most card shops. And I know that they've got the Lost Art promotion, which is sort of meant to encourage people to just buy packs in general. If you spend $30, you get a Lost Art card. But I think that we could be doing so much more with this. But it still leaves the elephant in the room of what do you actually do about modern Yu-Gi-Oh! This is a big one because there's a lot with modern Yu-Gi-Oh! It's just kind of a vortex. I mean, if you ask 10 different people, you're going to get 10 different answers on what the exact problem with modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, right? I mean, some people say it's the, combo decks with the long 10-minute turns. Some people say it's all the different summoning mechanics they've introduced, hand traps, floodgates, everything, right? Just the general power creep of the game. And I don't really have the solution to that, but I do think that maybe what Konami could do
What the hell, Paul?
is just have ban lists
Fix
that
the
are,
game!
I don't know, a little bit more on the control end, maybe like, formats that seem to be a little bit slower and more interactive.
Here's a reality of this like overarching like elephant in the room that everyone just can't seem to find a solution to or discuss or really, right? I think you leave modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Alone as it is because the people who play modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Like it and love it and they enjoy the fact that it's 10-minute wombo combo back and forth, crazy like flashy pew pew pew, right? Call of Duty but in cards, right? People like basically most modern competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Players like the fact that they get to play like an FPS game but with cards, right? And I think you leave it like that. I don't think you change that. I think you leave it as it is. I think what you need to do is create like a second format. Something that is either an alternative to the current game, which is either rotation, draft, legacy format, whatever, something like that, right? Like you leave modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Alone. People love it. They're sold on it. This is your core like player base. They're not changing. They're not changing on this. Your core Yu-Gi-Oh! Players do not want to change the game. They love the fact that they have to play decks with like a bunch of hand traps and they have to special summon 50 times. Like, don't touch that part of the game. Just keep doing what you're doing. Like, it's fine, right? For the most part, like most of us are sold on that. And if you fuck with that, you probably kill the game, right? What they need to do is like make a format, and not to the point where it's like Magic, where it's like, hey, do you want to play Magic? Yeah, sure. Do you want to play Legacy, Vintage, Modern, Commander, or Advanced, or blah blah? Do you know? And you're just like, I don't know, dude. I just want to duel, like, right? In Yu-Gi-Oh, like you could just have like 2 major competitive formats and maybe like a draft format or something like that. Just something very simple, as an alternative to the current game, and I think that would go a long way for helping like new players. Is just a competitive Yu-Gi-Oh format, but slower, more simpler to digest, easier to understand. Basically just sanctioning like, Gold or Edison or something like that, which aren't really pushed or marketed to the point as being a relevant part of modern Yu-Gi-Oh. Because people think of modern Yu-Gi-Oh, they think of all the crazy flashy combos. There's nothing else to do unless you do that, right? Typical new player experience is to play online. How do you play Yu-Gi-Oh online? You go on Macedo. You go on Macedo, there's one way to play the game. That's it. There's nothing else you can do. There's no other way to play Yu-Gi-Oh. It's just modern, competitive, ranked, constructed, and there's nothing else you can do. So that's a problem. I think draft would be huge. Deck building is 50% of Yu-Gi-Oh. Sometimes deck building is more important than technical play in Yu-Gi-Oh. Why is there no game mode, quote-unquote, dedicated to deck building, which is drafting? It doesn't exist. It's not a thing in Yu-Gi-Oh. We haven't done it in like 10 years. So I think there's potential there.
Seem to also be the more popular ones. This isn't going to be a banlist discussion. I mean, you guys can talk about what you think, should get hit. I think, though, that with the large card pool that Yu-Gi-Oh has,
I don't like deck building. Well, I do like deck building.
and the maturity of the game, it's hard to make any real sweeping changes. So this is probably, while it's the biggest issue, it's also the one that is just the hardest to solve. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I want to hear you guys' opinions on this. What do you think Yu-Gi-Oh has to do to kind of like get new players?
Yu-Gi-Oh has to fix the game.
New players. We all know the card
make
shop
it good.
Right now isn't that people aren't into
make the
competitive
game
play.
good.
It's more so that we're not getting new blood. We're not
make
getting
the
kids,
game
returning
good.
players, that sort of thing.
That's
so I want to hear all your suggestions down in the comments.
Make
And of
it
course, we're gonna
better,
check out the
Paul.
documents that I was
Make
referring
the
to.
game
There's
good.
links to it. What should Konami be doing? What
Make
would you do
the
in this situation?
what
How
should
do you think some of
Konami
these
do?
changes might
Make
happen
it
in the TCG
good.
if they can be translated to the TCG.
God, what does
So
he
those are all
not
your
get?
opinions. And should I do more talking head videos like this? It's cool to know. All right, that's gonna be it. I will be reading you guys' comments, definitely responding. You can also come hang out with me over on social media, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, all the places. Subscribe for more Yu-Gi-Oh. It's gonna be it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Fast turn.
Did he just say pass turn? Is that his outro?
Next one. Fast turn. Hey guys.
Bro, okay, I need to make a new outro. I'm not gonna say pass turn. I'm gonna be like, sign the slip. Like, bro, I'm not passing turn. I already won. Give me that. Sign it, bitch. Anyway, this was a very good video. Like I said, I think these are like the 3 fundamental key points that need to be assessed for Yu-Gi-Oh to be successful. Either you do something about in current format, you either leave it alone, which ideally is what you do, but if, hypothetically, if you were to touch the current metagame, you'd have to like do something to address how long it takes for a turn. You need to do something for how long it takes to read cards, and I think that is a genuine issue because processing one Yu-Gi-Oh card takes forever. And the third is there's no guidance in Yu-Gi-Oh. There's not really any way to know how to play the game in a non-mechanical way. What I mean by that is, where do I buy a deck? What card should I play? What deck should I even build? How do I know what if this is a good price for a deck or not? Like, these are all simple questions everyone knows how to answer who's been playing the game for years, but as a new player, it's like, this is a lot of new information to absorb, and there isn't really any guidance on what you do to actually practically get yourself into a local store, sitting down and playing a duel. There isn't a lot that teaches you that. You know what I mean? So anyway, yeah, TLDR, that's the video. That was a good video. That's my reaction. Smile. And Jeff, Pickle Rick.